This world is a game, a simulation if you will, made up of ones and zeros, and in this world, there are millions of people coded with layers and layers of programming. This is the simulation theory. The hypothesis proposes that all of our existence is a simulated reality, such as a computer simulation, that an observed action activates a population of neurons, and are also used to generate the same action. Simulation allows you to explore what-if questions and scenarios without having to experiment on the system itself. It helps you to identify bottlenecks in material, information, and product flows. It helps you to gain insight into which variables are most important to system performance. But I'm not here to tell you the history of the game theory, but rather, I want to explain the story of the man who turned this theory into reality, and ended up paying the price. Our story starts with a brilliant programmer named John Parker, a 21-year-old American living in Queens in the bustling, crowded city of New York. John from an early age really liked playing video games and watching cartoons and even anime. It was these two things that inspired John to take up this project, and it's what made him interested in the simulation theory. Also, what stemmed from when he was a child, John was really interested in programming and making games himself. All of this started when John was watching a cartoon. In the cartoon, the character was transported to a different world using a headset device, and that virtual world being a copy of the world. While watching the TV, John thinks to himself for a bit. He thought if he could make something like this. That's when a sudden realization befuddled John. He can make something like this. I'm a programmer, he said. I make games and VR games all the time. This can be easy. And with a little bit of help, I can create my own world. After the unusual thought, John immediately go to work. He began to research what to get for his project. He also began mapping out a story for the world, but he scrapped it and rather make it a sandbox game. He already had the basic gear like a VR headset. He just needed a few pieces of tech that would enhance the VR experience. Like a virtual reality vest, which is a vest that allows you to experience pain in the VR game you're playing. He also bought gloves so the player can experience touch. Both of these items were expensive, but were worth it to John. With all the pieces ready to be put together, he just needed one more thing, a facility to house all the equipment. He needed a space that was open and big so the player can move around freely without having to be mindful of their surroundings. So he went online and looked up the cheapest facility he can find and rented it out for the month. John thought after they get more volunteers, they will get the funds necessary to get their own place and maybe one day make it an attraction so the whole world can see his work. Day 1 of programming the new world went very smoothly. The code itself is like any other VR game. The only thing he needed to add was more logic and input the touch and pain, so the vest and gloves could work properly. John at first was stumped at times, only because he never made a VR game before. As stated earlier, John didn't want any VR game. He wanted a realist world, a sandbox life simulator. He didn't want any story or fantasy elements in the game because it would be like the real world at all, and it would take too long to produce, and John refuses to wait years just to make this game. John was so insistent on the idea of making a new world a world just like our own that he began taking this like buildings, houses, famous places, and putting them in the game. He at one point wanted to add weather that would replicate the chaotic one we have here on Earth. John was simply trying to copy the Earth and transmit it into data. To this very day, no one knows why he wanted to make a new Earth in video game or why he even wanted to do this ambitious project. The only thing we know is that John wanted a world fitted in his image. But even with his programming skills, John knew he couldn't do it alone. He needed a partner. That's where Brandy Dell comes in. He is a skilled game developer who has 5 years of experience making VR games. With Brandy's help, they were able to speed up the project without having problems. And after day in and day out, these two spent hours trying to complete the game. They barely even slept, and after many, many hardships of programming, they finally did it. After what felt like an eternity of coding, John finally, after 5 years, finished his game, and the result, in John's words, were biblical. It should have ended there, but John had other plans, you see. John had another devious plan, a plan so cruel it would change his life and his game in many ways he didn't expect.